All right, welcome to another expert interview. As always, we're just going to jump straight into it. Alvin, why don't you tell us who you are, man, and what you do?
Devin, great to be here, and thanks for having me. So, my background is I've turned 7 distressed companies around in 6 different industries, any combination of turnaround, growth, and M&A. Industry agnostic, aerospace, oil and gas, power gen, nuclear, elevators, plumbing, you name it.
I love it. So, I mean, we had a great conversation getting to know you, and it's been fun over the last few meetings. Like, how does your system work in every industry? Like, usually systems are applicable to a industry. So, could you give us like kind of the high overview of why it's applicable to all business?
That's a great question, Devin. Wow. I've been asked about the different industries, but how it's applicable, I haven't been asked. So you've got me a little bit here on the spot. If I was going to answer it very quickly, I would say culture, right? Because culture transcends, it's human. Culture transcends industry, right? It's like change is constant, but the method of change, has to be configured to a certain extent.
Love that. And so what's awesome is you were on the webinar I was hosting, which was great. I appreciate your feedback. And one thing you said on there, I want to dive into, right? I often am talking about sales and growth because that's where I live. But you brought something up and you said something to the quote was like you could find 10% in the current business or something like that.
Yeah,
Could you give me that quote again and let's dig in there for a minute?
sure, sure. A lot of so when I entered the businesses that I was turning around, the first thing the business owners would say is, "I need sales." And in 100% of the cases, it wasn't sales that they needed. They need to view their operations and the way their staff conduct themselves as it pertains to the business. And I use that wording very specifically because I don't want to say performance or use these generic terms. It was how employees behaved according to what was required. That needed an adjustment. And the only way that could happen is to bring it to their attention. It had to be identified first. And so effectively, we extrapolated anywhere from 20 to 30% of profit back from the business just from what they had versus going after new sales.
I love that. And I want to reiterate that because I think I see people spend more money on sales, more money on marketing, more money on sales, social media, AI, this, and there's a lot. There's a lot of shiny objects. And they may even flood the funnel and they may find success. But what I find is they often break. They grow to a point, right, where they can't fulfill and they weren't paying attention to the fact that it's the systems, the processes, the people, it's the behind the scenes or the backstage, whatever analogy people want to use, like there's so much more there. So let's, I mean, keep talking to me about that. Like, what should people
That's a
be
great
looking at?
point. Like the sometimes sales is an invisible poison because let's just say the business and the sales is designed really to achieve a 40% margin, but you're doing it at 25%. That says that your business is not performing, even though sales are growing. And what it means also is that there's more pressure being put on the company because the operations really can't support the sales. It's an illusion that more sales is actually better in some cases. It's just like the human body. Health begins from within, not from outside. And so the business is exactly the same. We need to make sure that we've optimized, but not over optimize the business because that's a problem as well. Humans need latency and creativity. So you can't be overly optimized. So it has to be a real balancing act by the CEO. And oftentimes I would tell my employees, look, 95%, we're doing pretty good because we're going to need 5 times the energy, effort, and resources to get to 96. That's the law of nature. It's a logarithmic term. And so balancing that and understanding how that relates to business is vitally important. That could be a little bit of a secret sauce of mine because of my engineering background.
Well, I love that and how your mind works and you look at it. To kind of bring this home to people who are listening or watching, let's talk through a couple examples of really tactical things you've done with some of the clients you work with. And so just give me one and let's talk about it. And then we could do another one. So, who's the last client you worked with and what's one tactical thing that really shifted that company?
The best way I will answer that is that I would come in as the operating CEO, vice president of operations, whatever the title is. But effectively, I was a facilitator. and understanding introverts and extroverts, everyone has value. I would actually come up with an idea, celebrate it. Everyone will think that's the idea we're going with. And then all of a sudden I'd say, let's beat it up. Let's destroy this idea. And somewhere in between, it might identify whether it's good or not. You let the data make the decision, not you. And so as a facilitator, if you demonstrate that behavior, eventually everyone else starts to develop it. And then now I can just sit up at the front and have a board that splits the idea in half and say, good, bad, and then we decide together.
Love that. So a great takeaway there for anyone who's listening is being a leader is not being a dictator, right? It's not the person at the front of the ship saying, go this way. It's saying, I know we want to go this way. Now let's have a conversation on how do we get there, right? And I always like to talk about bringing your team together and letting, I let people take ownership, right? But the only way you can do that is by having that dialogue. What are we agreeing to? What are our expectations? So I love that your word choice was facilitator. I think there's a lot in there, and I think people can learn a lot there. So how do you be a good facilitator?
Well, you make them accountable because you say, listen, as a facilitator, I'm giving you all the options to do it right. But if you don't, then it's my way.
Love it. So that empowers the ownership, but then creates that accountability boundary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would challenge my management team. I'd say to them in the boardroom, tell you what, before I ask any of you about progress, I will ask the employees to understand if my message is getting communicated to them so it's flowing back up and have a closed loop system. That put accountability on the management so that they couldn't blame people who weren't there to represent themselves.
Another great nugget. So other than facilitation, you've talked a lot about people. Where else do you see businesses just broken and sideways?
I think if we were to ask that question about people, it would be the same as business because people are the business, right? Familiarity breeds contempt. Fear driven by lack of knowledge is also another reason. But then as a facilitator, you need to bridge that gap between fear and opportunity. One specific example, there were a group of folks I was working with, and they said, we only do this. And I asked them, what do you do? They said, well, we read drawings. I said, well, okay, you read drawings of a specific discipline. I said, can you read drawings from a different discipline? And they said, yes. And then a different discipline, yes. I said, so you're not a machinist or a technician, you're a reader of drawings. So no matter what drawing I bring you, guess what? You can read it. So there isn't anything we can't do. Guess what? We're going to start vertically integrating our business and offering our clients a turnkey solution. And I know that you can do it because you just told me you can read drawings.
Love that. So, I mean, that's an example of maximizing human capital, right? And empowering the team that's already there. Let's shift a little because I don't want to dive all the way in, but I want to give enough on this topic. So, I mean, you have a unique strategy for raising capital and retaining ownership. And I think that a lot of conversations I have with growing businesses is, right, I need money. I'm going to go get a partner. I'm going to sell. I'm going to raise capital. Like it's a very trendy topic right now. And it's more trendy than it's ever been with crowdfunding and all these other things. Let's talk about your approach a little bit in however much detail you want to go into, just to give people an idea of what the conversation could look like.
I'm really happy that you asked this question, Devin. It's a great question. It ties to my value system, right? Based on where I grew up and where I immigrated to Canada from, and where I want to leave the country, or not leave the country, but enhance my country and my society. One of the things in fundraising that people lack and don't look at on the get-go is who they could possibly partner with versus just going to raise money, right? There's someone else suffering the same symptoms as you are. And you don't sometimes have to dilute. It can be complementary, right? So, because raising capital usually entails giving up ownership of your business. And that's the last thing you ever want to do as a business owner. So if you can collaborate someone who's a plus and someone who's a minus, and you put those two together and you have a closed circuit, like that's my electrical engineering background coming out. Guess what? You've got a winning solution that's complementary. And then there are cases where what type of growth do you need? Do you need development growth? Okay, you need a certain type of investor for that. Do you need growth capital to bridge your existing operations with a purchase order? Okay, you may not need to give up equity in order to do that. So folks need to understand that they need to do a deeper dive into what type of growth they want to attain in exchange for what value.
Mm, it's so good. I think people always just run for the dollar, right? I need $1 million because I'm putting this band-aid on my business, right? That's an oversimplification, but I mean it's probably as far as most people get. And so I love that there's two things I heard you say. I heard you say partnerships, which I think people miss opportunities a lot, whether it's joint ventures, strategic partners, aligned marketing, or full on bringing partners in. I mean, there are people that are really good at what you're not good at. And sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you just make it happen.
Yeah, we use these terms that they're competitors, and in the lexicon of my world, we don't use adversarial terms in business. We use value creating terms. So they're not competitors, they're complementary. They're not opposite to us. There are ways that we can create value from each other.
I love that. I mean, I like to call competitors partners in awareness, right? They're in the same market doing the same thing, telling people. Now, if you're doing it better, great. But at the end of the day, they're probably doing something you're not. And I found growing my marketing agency, 25% of my book of business came from other agencies because they would get clients that go, wait, this isn't for me, but hey, Devin's open and honest. You should go talk to him.
That's exactly, and that's good for society as well, right? It's good for our culture, our well-being. It's positively driven, right? And so, like, based on what I do with M&A and it being a complementary and positive type of approach, it's hard to really understand where there's a downside in the whole process because it's all built around building businesses. There's nothing adversarial about building business.
That's awesome. So let's talk about you mentioned diluting equity, right? Which is a common mistake, giving up too much of your business to bring in money or partners. What are a couple other mistakes people make when they go out to raise capital?
A lot of folks think that investors equal capital, and they don't. And the analogy I use every single time is everyone goes to Starbucks for coffee. You're the 11th person in line at the Starbucks coffee shop. By the time they get to the 11th person, which is you, have you heard the same person order the same coffee twice? And the answer is no. The amount of effort required to find the right investor for your business needs to be understood, or else you will blow a ton of resources and time throwing spaghetti against the wall.
That's awesome. So how do I know it's the right person? Like, how do I know when I find the investor that's a right fit for me? You gave us a little bit earlier, but how do I know? What are some signs that I'm in the right conversation?
Well, the first thing you have to admit is that you don't know right out of the get-go. Because by doing the research, you're going to learn about yourself a little bit more as well. That's the most important missing point in raising capital. Everyone thinks they know their business, and they don't.
So you're saying I should just take the first deal. Whoever throws money on the table, I should just run with it.
Um, that's a gamble. That's a gamble,
I mean, that was a
right?
setup, but I think that happens, right? I think if we're raising capital in a moment of scarcity, I think that it can become very real though, right? Where like people like they see it and they go and it's like, well, you didn't do the due diligence, you didn't go through the feedback, you didn't test yourself, you didn't go down the path with that investor that was challenging you, and that might have been the right fit, but you just jumped. And so I say that, but I mean, you've probably seen it.
You know what? There are times and places where you don't have the time to do the research. And if someone offers you that capital, right, nothing's ever 100% or black and white. But if you understand that that capital is going to get you from here to there, right, and it may not be the best or the worst, I take it. Sure, why not, right? But you'll get a gut feeling. Don't shy away from your gut feel either, because I've seen some wise business owners say, look, you know what, they offered it to me, but it didn't feel right, and I backed away, and it's probably the right decision. But the key thing there is, again, is that business owners, founders need to invest time in researching what they really need out of an investor.
So you talked about positive impact, and I know that's huge to who you are and your values. So talk to me about positive impact in business. As business owners and stewards of business, what are some ways that we can do good and have positive impact?
Increase collaboration, meaningful collaboration. At one point in time, I worked with a Japanese corporation, and I learned about Japanese culture and how they did things. And it was very interesting how so many of the large competing corporations, for example, came together and solved problems, although they knew they were going to be facing one another in the battlefield. But there was an element of social well-being and building businesses properly without being an oligopoly, so to speak, right? They had an interesting way of doing things. Increased collaboration is very important, and honest collaboration, not being afraid to lose.
Well, and I think even, that analogy goes to, like, if we're talking about, again, partners in awareness or whatever term you guys want to use, right? People that play in your space. But I know you've heard it. I've heard it on every call I have with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship's lonely. And I love that you say collaboration, because the collective impact is more. And if you're lonely and lost, you're not performing well either. And so get people around you. I love that. I love that you talk about that. That's such good advice. And I think it's something we all need to hold ourselves accountable to. Like, are we actually plugging into community or not?
Well, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, loss cannot be a term that you use, because loss equals I haven't done enough research. The number one objective of an entrepreneur is not to solve problems. It's to demonstrate their creativity and surround themselves with folks that can deliver on that creativity. So loss is not a part of their lexicon.
So awesome, man. I love your approach to what you do, and it's so inspiring. Let's talk about leadership. So being a good leader, we talked about facilitation. What are some other key traits of good leaders?
Well, the obvious one is, you can't blame others, right? And you really can't blame yourself either, because blaming others demeans them. So if you blame yourself, guess what? You're demeaning yourself. And then that term loss comes in, right? So the thing is, maybe instead of saying I'm lost, suggest that I need to be more creative. Not that I'm not creative enough. I need to be more creative. What have I not looked at? I remember when I was turning around my first business, and as an immigrant to Canada, my family had a value that our job was the most important thing, because in a dictatorship country that we came from, we didn't have that. And so, my value system was value the opportunity that you have. But value meant something different to, say, a 22-year-old versus a 65-year-old, right? And understanding someone else's currency is so vital as a leader, so that you can cater and articulate your message to get a reflection of what you really want out of the whole situation. And so here I was thinking, hey guys, I thought everybody wants to grow the business. No, a lot of folks didn't. They just want to be comfortable in their coming in at 8 o'clock and leaving at 5:30 kind of thing. So once you understand the other person's currency and the market's currency, you need to understand that your employees, your suppliers, your clients, they all have currency. As a founder, as a CEO, you're selling to everybody. No one's taken for granted.
Yep.
I don't understand the term leadership, because it's a residue type term, not a proactive term. They're all past tense to me.
Yeah, versus active. And to your point, right? Understanding. And I love that you always go back to people because I think we forget everything is people. Everything, every vendor relationship, every client relationship, everything is people. And so I love that the commonality in every one of your answers, no matter what topic we're on, comes back to people. And it's understanding and it's compassion and it's time and it's values. And so I love that you're very stable on your approach to business in all relations because you talked about vendor relations, client relations, team relations. So I just love that, man. I love that
I,
that's your insight.
I think I shared an example with you where uh, a business owner, prior to selling his business, articulated to the acquirer, I believe it was a private equity firm, and said, you know what? Whatever you do, don't take away the $200 a week I spend on flowers in the cafeteria, right? Because got to cut out cost. Well, 6 months later, with a new CEO coming into on behalf of the private equity, he wanted to eliminate $800 in unnecessary cash utilization, right? It really hurt the people when the flowers were removed from the cafeteria. It was a big deal. And so I don't know if there, what the exact loss was, but when you talk about human capital, it's immeasurable. And so it's doing something as simple like that created a nice environment for people and then removing it. It's akin to a study they did in one of the urban areas that was heavily filled with crime. And what they did was 1 square block in this town, in the city, they cleaned it up, fixed all the windows, painted this and that. And what they noticed was the surrounding areas started to clean up by themselves. So we need to understand that when people see good, they undertake more good.
Mm. I want to go down that path and resonate with that because I watched a huge corporation move into a CFO. The CFO took over as CEO, and all the decisions were financial. And it's very relatable to your story because I watched them make decisions based on dollars, right? And they just started cutting stuff, and they cut stuff that was really weird because they never asked why. They never said, like, well, why do we spend money on this? Or like, what's the impact? And it was funny to watch that. And I've seen it, small businesses do it. I had one client that refused to pay for water service. And what he didn't notice is because he had team members come in before him every day, is his team members would walk down the hallway and fill up the gallon jug and then so they could have coffee. And as we noticed this behavior, I asked him, he's like, well, I don't want to spend the money on it. It's like, so you'd rather your team have to be inconvenienced at the very beginning of their day than spend the $15 on the water. And he went, I never thought of it that way. I just thought of it as money. And it's like, yeah, because it's people, it's the impact. So that's such a good analogy. The flowers in the cafeteria. Everyone should re-listen to that part and make sure they're not making those decisions in their own business.
Yeah, the old expression is penny smart and pound foolish, right? And money is a residue of people's behaviors and good conversations had by executives,
Mm.
not money.
So good, man. So talk to me about because you're in business and I know you're on a lot of educational webinars and stuff. What awesome stuff do you see coming for businesses in the next year? What are things businesses should be paying attention to?
The wonderful opportunity to collaborate with one another. Money is tight in the marketplace. Now is a wonderful time for good little businesses to come together.
And when you say that, are you talking about full partnerships? Are you just talking about like some joint venture, co-marketing efforts, all of it? Is there a certain way they should do it, or is it just look for opportunities to collaborate?
Look for opportunities to collaborate and look for partners like what I do, right? We have skin in the game in our mergers and acquisition relationships where we become shareholders. And having skin in the game, we want to actually grow the business, not provide a transaction. We're all about relationships and collaboration. And business owners, small business owners, take, for example, a company I was working with in Africa. They want to raise $15 million to get to 1 million in sales. I said, doesn't make sense. So what was the problem? They said in Africa, we can only charge 1% if we don't have a license for payments. So, okay, find someone with an inferior application and a good sized market that you can plug into. They said, we didn't think about that. I said, okay, now that we've had the discussion, get to work. 4 weeks later, we get on the call. We said, we found someone. And we project that with their market and the total scalability, we'll be at $3 million in sales in 6 months. And that was just no dilution. And what do you call that? A JV? Partnership? I don't know what to call it. I'm a simple guy. I call that collaboration.
That's a great example, though. And I think that it's that lone wolf mentality, right? Like you want to be a hunter and a killer, but how else can we collaborate? And matter of fact, we just got rid of a whole service offering in our business, whole service offering we just got rid of. And I brought a partner company in, and that's all they do now because I looked at my time to return and I didn't want to keep up with delivering at the top level. And so I just found someone that's top level and went, we just use them, go talk to
Yeah.
them. And so I think I love that that's your advice. And I mean, people should take time to look like where could they grow if they collaborated.
I don't have all the answers, but it's on my website. The purpose of conversation is to make progress. It's not to be right or to be wrong. And so I don't know the answers, but I know by having good open conversation, we'll figure something out or something will come about.
Love that. So I like to ask two questions of everyone I talk to. The first question is this: if you look back on your journey, what's some advice you would give to your younger self?
Oh, goodness gracious. um, let's say be a little bit more patient. I think we'd all say that. I'd say be a bit more patient. Um, Sometimes the willingness to help overly is also not good because a relationship is about meeting in the middle and never crossing the line. And so I found a lot of times, if one tries to help too much, it could scare the other party, or they weren't assigning value to themselves by overstepping the line.
So two pieces of wisdom, patience, totally agree. I think there's definitely moments we all can look back on where we either jumped or did something and we probably should have just slowed down for a second. And then, yeah, I love that the second takeaway too. So yeah, I mean, yeah, great advice.
Devin, I'll tell you what I learned in football and wrestling, team sport and individual sport, right? And I played at very good levels of both of them. The definition of teamwork is doing your job right the first time.
Fair. Okay. I see it.
That's something that I would instill in folks that I work alongside.
That's
The
awesome.
definition of teamwork is doing your job right the first time.
Love that. That does put an I in team, huh? So
It's made up of eyes.
right. So talk to me about a book or podcast people should check out, listen, watch.
Actually, I think that's a relative question to where you are in life. When I was young, I read Anthony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power, and it really, really helped me, right? It brought some, other than being raised in a Christian value home, Anthony Robbins' book helped me to put some perspective to the surrounding world, right? And that helped a lot. I don't read too many books because I found a lot of books were past tense and they were based on a certain situation that a certain individual with a certain perspective wrote a story about, which is good, but it doesn't sometimes evolve. Now, there is a book by Elihu Goldratt, and it's called The Goal. This is one of the most beautiful books that I can ever imagine recommending because he didn't dictate. His book was about the facilitation of a business that turned around and grew and blossomed at the granular level. And I found that very, very insightful and one that I refer to everybody. Elihu Goldratt, The Goal. It's an old book and it's based on the theory of constraints. So you don't push things, you allow things to come to you. meeting in the middle. I
So
often told and shared with folks that I hate making decisions. They said, well, you're the executive. You should be. I said, if I have to make a decision, then I didn't do my homework. Let the data decide for you.
man, there's two great takeaways. And I love that you give two perspectives because I think books, podcasts, education speak to everyone differently at different times. And different times could literally be a day apart or decades apart, right? Depending on what is emotionally driving you. So, Alvin, man, I appreciate you making time. I know you're busy. I know you're always grinding. You're doing a lot of stuff. We just talked about it today. For you and I, we both have been slammed. But thank you for making time. Is there anything we missed? Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
Devin, you've been a fantastic facilitator. I really appreciate that. I think we covered everything in the areas that I think we should. I'd love to do another one with you sometime on a different topic, but in the context of turning and growing businesses, I think you steered the conversation perfectly because you didn't go past the people today.
Love it, man. Well, I appreciate that. How do people get in touch with you? If they want to have a conversation with you and dig in on any of these topics, what's the best way to connect?
LinkedIn is by far the best way to connect with me.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you again for taking the time. If you're listening to this, make sure you leave us a review on whatever platform. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like, put a comment down below. We can record more content. So if you guys ask a bunch of questions, we'll just hit record again and we'll answer the questions. Those tend to be really good conversations. So give us some feedback. Ask the questions we missed. And Alvin, thanks again for taking the time.
Devin, it's been a real pleasure here, and you're a man of your word and your action. So it's been a wonderful building our relationship together. Thank you.